Sword of Flames! This is the new world, new translation! New world, new translation! Let's get ready for the River remix! And I'm a parasite that I can't control my own reactions and satisfaction! I can't control the beast that's living inside me! I don the red. Red's the color of the blood. I had to steal from all the wicked.
What's up, my arch fiends of chaos? Sorry, my hair's kind of messy. Kind of, going through some pretty big stuff. Anyways, there's some news going around here. When I mean news, is that there's actually some news going around here. What the news I'm talking about is now Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually going to get a different director, just like it is with Final Fantasy 15, because fans want the project to be here so much earlier. Now, I've only watched Final Fantasy Peasant's video before I started doing this, so that's where my source comes from. So if you want to get angry, go ahead. Please don't want to spam his comments. Please, but I'm just saying, that's where I got at least this from. And he's a reliable source of Final Fantasy stuff. I'm still subscribed to him. I know it sounds like he can't get his dick out of my mouth at times, but I gotta quote where I found the source. So I have to put, where I found out about this. Now, this information is Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually going to might be produced. And I said might, because even he probably don't know all the thing that's going on. They could change it back to Nomura's jurisdiction. Who knows? We didn't know Tabata was going to take over 15 until 15 came out. So what's happened is that the director for Final Fantasy 13 actually might take the Final Fantasy VII Remake and actually end up being the directors of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Well, now there is going to be good news and bad news. The good news is, the good news, and I'm talking the good news. The good news is that Final Fantasy VII Remake will be coming out a lot earlier than it was planned to. That's the good news. Bad news. Now, you think episodic gaming is bad, where it's all episodic. But, here's the thing. If it's controlled by the director of Final Fantasy 13, because remember, Tetsuya Nomura was only a character designer for 13. He wasn't one of the directors like he was for the original 7. So, he was only a character designer for 13. Now, what this could actually mean is that, yes, Nomura would still have his hand in it, because of course they want Nomura to design the characters. And we did see the trailer for Final Fantasy VII Remake. It looks a bit like Final Fantasy 13 graphics. They look like the Final Fantasy 13 characters a little bit. As we see, it's Final Fantasy VII Remake, but with the 13 graphics system and engine system, but with Unreal Engine system backing up all of that at the same time. So they're going to keep Nomura on there. So Nomura's not going to have no fallout like he did with Hajime Tabata. So we can assure that Nomura's still going to be working partially on the Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it's just going to be given and directed by the people who made 13. Now, let's talk about the bad news. The bad news of this, what the bad news of the remake of Final Fantasy VII could mean is it could be cut in 3 games, just like the Lightning Trilogy. Like, I think the first game would end after Aeris dies, but it would be called something. It wouldn't even, I think it was going to be like that anyways, but what the bad news is that there's going to be like multiple Final Fantasy VII games. Multiple Final Fantasy VII games. Now, since they're going to cut out Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus and Avid Children from canon, the other bad news they could end up doing is they could keep milking Final Fantasy VII Remake so hard that we'd have so many sequels and prequels that are different variants and variations of Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus. But since now with the Final Fantasy VII Remake, since we can get the Zack story in there a lot better and a lot more Zack into the game, and Vincent Valentine's going to have a bigger role in the Final Fantasy VII Remake, this might be good because this means we might not need to, have a Dirge of Cerberus, because this one will have Vincent Valentine's involve a lot more than he was in the original game. However, it's the same thing with Zack. Now, however, the bad news is that these new sequels and prequels could end up being pretty bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy XIII did good on its sequel. I don't care what anyone says. I know there's a certain viewer out there who hates Final Fantasy XIII too, you know. But yeah, you gotta listen to this if you do watch this video. 13.2 was pretty decent. 13.2 was pretty decent, you know. I played hours. I leveled up all my characters all the way to 99 with max everything. And I like the villain Caius. It's when they made 13.3, or should I say Final Fantasy Majora's Mask, pretty much. When they made Lightning's Return, don't get me wrong, the cities were cool. You get to play as Lightning solo. Lightning's a good character. And all that stuff. I just didn't like the whole end of the world kind of stuff because it put too much pressure. I couldn't enjoy the game the way I wanted to. Like, I really want to just walk around and fuck around and just, you know, do extra quests and just walk around. I didn't get to play the game fully like I did with other Final Fantasies. Like, I got to enjoy 15. I got to enjoy, you know, when I'm talking about the newer ones, I got to enjoy 15. I got to enjoy the latest Dissidia. You know, I got to enjoy Type 0, even though Type 0 is not really a new game at all. But you get the point. I want to be able to actually sit down and play the game like I usually do. Because I like Final Fantasy so much. I want to just sit for hours on this chair, not move for hours on end, enjoying the game instead of going through stuff like that. That's the only thing that I'm kind of worried with the Final Fantasy VII Remake being under the Final Fantasy 13's director. Is that it could end up being, you know, and it could end up being linear. But I guess it won't. Even if it did end up linear, it's not going to matter. It's Final Fantasy VII. It's going to sell just for the title and the updated versions of the characters with voice acting and everything, you know. And Final Fantasy VII being my personal favorite, I'm going to end up buying it too, so I can't talk so much shit on it. But I'm kind of worried that they might end up making sequels and prequels that expand the story to the point where it does not need to be expanded, you know. Because one thing I liked about the old canon, is it made sense with each other. You know, it made sense. Now, I have children with the Remnants. It was but at least it still tied into the original game. At least it's still tied to the original game. You know, as for like Dirge's, you know. Dirge's Service and Crisis Core are perfect because they actually tied in the game without messing up the original canon. You know, saying that the Deep Ground Army was trapped under Midgar, you know, by the meteor. And that they were, you know, they didn't want to interrupt what was going on with Sephiroth and the planet and all that, and the weapons being out there. So, you know, it still kept it as is. And then the fact that Genesis was trapped in a cave while all of Final Fantasy VII was happening. So pretty much Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus were really good with keeping, you know, keeping the original story while also writing their own story. You know, if I'm making any sense. The only thing I'm really worried about with this new director, it's not really a new director, for the director of Final Fantasy 13. I love Final Fantasy 13, but you couldn't apply the same stuff from Final Fantasy 13 to 7. You know, you really can't. Because 7, you know, it has to stay within its own roots. Fans are going to really look at that. It's going, you know, sure, people didn't like Dirge of Cerberus that much, but fans could admit, even haters of Dirge of Cerberus, could admit that it stayed within their own story. It still has something to do with Soldier, Shinra, Sephiroth, just like it should have been, you know. It still stayed within it while also making its own story at this brand new story, but with it mixing right into the history of Shinra. That there's actually more scientists in Shinra than just Professor Hojo, Lucretia Crescent, Professor Gas, and Alphania. That there was actually more scientists out there. So I like that Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus filled in the blanks while making a new story, but filling the blanks that was missing. And that's the way Final Fantasy VII should end up being. It should just be filling up the blanks and nothing else. That's what I think it should be doing, you know, instead of, you know, actually, you know, take it away from that. And the only problem with the director for Final Fantasy XIII was a good story. But when they made Lightning's Return, they took everything we knew about Final Fantasy XIII and threw it out the window. That's why Lightning's Return is the most infamous Final Fantasy 13 game, which is 13-3, technically. You know, but it was the most infamous game for a good reason, because it took out everything. Now, granted, they made Benevol's the father of all foul seed, thus tying the game together, you know, but they made so much story. It's the characters were never themselves. The characters were different characters than what we knew. I'm glad for character development, but there's such thing as character development, and then there's too much retconning. And the problem with 15, why Tabata gets hate for 15, because he retcons so many things about Final Fantasy 15 characters. They're not the same way we knew on Versus 13, and they're not the same when we first bought the game. And see, the only issue I got is that it could happen to Final Fantasy VII Remake with the sequels. You know, with this new director because of Lightning's Return. You know, now if he makes the new story, but make it count with the Shinra, Soldier, and Sephiroth while still establishing a brand new story, then you know what, I'm going to be good with it. But I'm going to just wait it out and see what's going to happen. Remember, this is not permanent. It could change. So don't get mad at me, but this could always change. So may the crystal be with you. And I'm still going to be into the Final Fantasy VII Remake no matter what they do to the game. And I know most of us are going to do that too. So may the crystal be with you.